Hello everyone. Today I'm going to talk about a really heavy subject, and that is abortion. And I am also going to talk about men's rights in relation to this, and also single parenthood and adoption and the role of government in all of this. First, I want to address I believe what is one of the biggest reasons why there is such huge differences and gaps between different ideologies when it comes to abortion. And that is the way people frame it greatly affects the answer they come to. So for instance, when the left frames abortion as reproductive rights, I mean, it makes libertarians say rights are always good, freedom is always good, right? And really anybody would say, like, yeah, that sounds good. And it almost sounds like reproductive rights, like a woman should be able to choose if, she wants to have a baby, like get pregnant or something, or have the baby, like the government shouldn't tell her she can't have a baby. And they shouldn't force women to get pregnant, but it's like the government, I believe, should really only be there to help protect life and property rights. And so people's physical well-being. And so me, a pro-life person, does believe that the way this issue should be framed is in when is the baby in the womb a life? If it's a life, the answer is never to murder a life. And the government's role is to help protect its people from physical harm. And that baby deserves that same protection. Then something else that some people do is they start kind of arguing about what is just best for society. And I would argue that the government has no role in deciding, in just being this puppet master of, our wonderful, corrupt, horrible, inefficient, awful government should be like responsible for seeing what is best for the world. And the idea that you should kill somebody because they might commit a crime, or even are statistically more likely to commit a crime, is like, that's just unacceptable. Like, that's a crazy notion if you really follow through on the logic of that. But I've heard people say it, or seen people comment about that, well, think of these people are a lot of times in poverty, and like if their parent didn't want them, they'll probably like grow up with a bad childhood, and then they're more likely to commit crimes and suicides and this and that. But it's like, if they take their life later, like that's on them. But like, you can't just preemptively kill people because you think that they're going to make bad decisions and you think that they're going to be miserable. So you just decide to no, that's morally wrong. So that's my stance on that. But I can understand if you frame it differently and if you just don't even see it. Yeah. I mean, to be honest, when I was a kid, I was a strange kid. And for some reason I was like thinking about abortions and unplanned pregnancies, but it's like, I guess I had just seen in media or this or that, books, TV, I don't know. My parents tried to shelter me some, but anyway, and I remember thinking like, shoot, don't they have like a pill for this or something? Like if you don't want to just like make the baby not grow and turn into a baby. So I did have that thought. So I am kind of sympathetic to people who've never really considered it from the perspective of when does the life begin. But here are some facts. That is that the baby has a heartbeat at 5 weeks. And here's the thing, the first 2 weeks of a pregnancy, the girl's not pregnant. So that's when their period starts. And then they ovulate more around week 2, and then that's when they get pregnant. So, and then you can start sometimes seeing it after it's been a full 3 weeks on those like early pregnancy tests, and then it's definitely been long enough, like their period is due at 4 weeks. And so if somebody is super on top of it, takes a pregnancy test like the day that she's late, realizes she's pregnant, and then gets an abortion, I guess like within a day, yeah, then she would be terminating, I believe it still lives a life, just biblically, but, and just my beliefs, but that would be before a heartbeat. So I'll give you that. But here's the thing. that's not what's going on here. People cannot, if somebody's not trying to get pregnant, they probably are not even tracking their period that well. And most women, or a lot of women, are semi-irregular. So anyway, it would be extremely unlikely for somebody to seriously get an abortion before that mark, except for, I'm not talking about the morning after pill. I'm just not going to address that. And then something else to know is about when the baby can kick. They can detect the baby kicking at like 7 to 8 weeks. So that's like 2 months. And that is well within mid first trimester, when they can tell the baby is moving. So this is not a cluster of cells. It's not like a mole. It's like if your mole was like bouncing around, I mean, that would be very creepy, but it's like, that's what's going on. Like, this is not just some little cluster of cells like some people like to say. Sometime between 16 and 22 weeks, which is in the second trimester, the woman can feel the baby kick. So not only can they tell from the ultrasound, they can feel it, they know the baby's kicking. The woman can feel this life inside of her kicking in the second trimester. So let's just keep that in mind. Something else to keep in mind is that 90% of babies will live to at least 1 year who are born at 27 weeks or later. So at that point, they are so far along that, with medical help, they can survive outside of the womb. And so again, like that, that is starting to get into the third trimester, but like the very, very beginning of it. Please, let's have some perspective. And this is why I really, really hate the idea of framing it like reproductive rights, because then people come to these conclusions where it's almost like any abortion, anytime is fine. But it's like, no, we have to contend with the reality that this is a life at some point, and then at least put barriers up. I'd prefer just no abortions whatsoever, but like at least put some kind of barriers up of saying, okay, when you can feel the baby kicking, like it's a life, we can't abort the baby. Okay, but now that I kind of addressed all of that, I want to talk about some things that I just don't think are talked about in relation to the abortion discussion. And the first one is men's rights. I believe that men should have some kind of rights to their baby and to parenting their baby. I believe they should have rights and liability of notice of this baby. And okay, so some women don't know who the father is, so that could be tricky, and maybe they have no idea, like they seriously could not even contact him even if they wanted. Okay. But also, there's lots of women who do know and choose not to tell the man involved. And there's a couple things going on with this. One, about abortion, and then also about single parenthood. And I get so frustrated because I see it on TV pretty often, where there's these stories, and then it's like the woman got pregnant and then she kind of ghosted on the guy but never actually told him. And a lot of times it's framed kind of like, oh, well, I didn't want to put that on him. Like she's being altruistic. That is not altruistic, and that's not your choice. That is not up to the woman to decide whether the man will or won't want to be involved in his child's life. I believe it should be an obligation that she should have to give notice, and should she not do that, she certainly should forfeit child support. I'm sorry, that's my opinion on how that should work out, because men do have some kind of right and obligation in relation to this. And then feminists will get all mad about like men not stepping up enough, but it's like, that's not fair when women preemptively decide for them. But then sometimes it's not about they preemptively decided the guy really just wouldn't want to be involved. It's that the woman wants control over the situation. They want control over being the mom. And sometimes maybe the guy is bad or abusive or whatever. And that is a tricky situation. And that's where you have to kind of say, like, women, like, let's try to be smarter in who we choose who to sleep with. And I'm not really talking about with a single parenthood discussion about rape. That could be a different situation as far as his rights and liabilities related to children. But let's just exclude that to make the conversation simpler. Men should have some kind of rights in relation to this. But of course, feminists don't want to talk about that at all. It's just kind of like, it's not your body, so you don't matter. But it was like, well, it was their semen that made it possible, and it is their child. And then they do matter when it comes to when you want child support. So I believe you just have to play it both ways. And then something else to keep in mind is, and I believe we shouldn't have abortions. But okay, so if we do, and women can choose to opt out all on their own opinion, like, is that reasonable to say, and men have no opt out? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, I understand the frustration of women but it's my body. Like, it's the baby's in my body. Like, I don't want to have to go through that. I shouldn't be forced by his decision to go through pregnancy, but I think that's where he is like, kind of got to take it up with God. Or if you don't believe in God, like, I don't know, take it up with something else, but just recognize, like, I'm sorry, like, this is the way it is. Like, women are the ones that get pregnant, okay? Like, that's not men's fault, and men don't forfeit any kind of parental rights because women happen to be the ones that carry the children. I understand how emotionally, like, I can feel sympathetic towards that sentiment of, oh, but I'm the one going through the pregnancy. But I just don't believe that that's a good argument to say because of that, therefore I have all the control and you have no control, and you pay if I want you to pay, you don't pay if I don't want you to pay, you visit if I want you to visit, you don't visit if you don't want to visit, and I got to have total control over this whole situation because I'm the one who happens to be biologically designed to bear children. I mean, that just is not fair, and that's not really logical. Something else that I want to talk about is adoption in relation to this abortion discussion. Was with those people who kind of argue, oh, well, the foster system wouldn't be able to work. There's already too many kids without parents. Well, then maybe what we should talk about is not allowing people to murder their unborn children in the womb because we're worried about the foster care system overflowing. Maybe we need to look at adoption reform or something like that. And what I would argue for is something that is getting the free markets more involved. And I mean, I'm not being a good libertarian and saying I do believe there needs to be some level of oversight in relation to that, where, dang it, I meant to look it up. There's like a country where it really was a problem where it was like baby mills going on. So, you know, maybe you say the adoption places won't pay women to drop off their children or something like that, so you don't end up having people trying to get pregnant just to sell off their children, because that's not good. And then the children ended up getting neglected and were like super, like, they were cute and physically okay, but they were totally mentally, emotionally ruined, pretty much. It was really, really sad. Or very few ended up being able to work through it. But anyway, there needs to be adoption reform. and it needs to be easier for people to adopt. And I'm not, it's hard. Like, you don't want children to end up getting abused, so that's why you want some regulation. But you also don't want too much regulation where it drives up the cost, where it's cost prohibitive. And you also don't want you don't want women to be like forced to give up their children. Like, that's a sad thought. But also at the same time, you need it to be a situation where the people who are trying to adopt do not think they've adopted and then, oops, nope, the birth mom decided she wanted to take the kid back, and stuff like that. Like, I've seriously, like, there's a lot of people in my church. Like, I think we have a very foster adoptee kind of culture in our church. There's a lot of people who've talked about situations similar to that. I don't know the exact details, but this does happen. And that's why a lot of people spend tens of thousands of dollars to adopt children overseas. So it's not as if nobody wants to adopt. There is a huge problem with infertility in this country and in Western culture. One group of people who do not like abortion are people who struggle with infertility. People who've been praying for years for a baby, to have some other freaking woman get pregnant like every other month. That's not possible, but and then just continually kill her babies. Like, it's so sad, and a lot of people get really kind of mad at God about that situation. But we live in a fallen world, and that is all thanks to sin. But anyway, they get really mad, and people would like to adopt, and people would prefer if they could just adopt here in the country. And if it were scientifically more plausible and not a huge risk to the fetus, it's like, I think it would be great to, I guess, transplant a baby from one uterus to a woman who was struggling with fertility, you know, like instead of in vitro, just like straight implantation of a baby. You know, sure. But turns out we can't do that. So the next best thing is the person who doesn't want their baby needs to just have their baby, deal with their consequences. You can't just opt out when the opt-out option is the loss of somebody who is, I don't see how you can say it's not a life. You know, just have it and then give it up for adoption. And you know what? There's a lot of people who'd be very happy to adopt a baby, especially if that person was not abusing alcohol or drugs during their pregnancy. And then also with that thought of allowing the free markets to work with adoption agencies is that, yeah, maybe they'd get to a point where they charge people to drop off, like if somebody wants to give up their kid for adoption, maybe they have to pay. And I believe that it should be a legal liability where you have your rights, which are nice, like your rights to the child, but you also have a liability to figure out how to take care of them. And if you're going to refuse to take care of them, you have to find somebody who will, or pass it off to kind of a middleman, being an adoption agency. And the adoption agency may get to a place where it's saying, we are going to need more resources to effectively connect your child with people. So you're going to have to pay us. I understand that that's like, there's probably a lot of people who are really not going to like this video actually, but you know, I just believe that it's better than the current situation. And as far as abuse of children, like children right now, even with all of our current regulations, they still get abused within the foster care system. They still get abused even after they're adopted. They still get abused by like having to kind of do this back and forth with their birth parents, where, my gosh, I've heard so many horrible stories where it seems so obvious that you should know that that person should not be allowed to have that child ever again in their life, but that still can't happen. I mean, you know, and I'm just saying, the person who's treating the kid like crap, the person who wants to get rid of the child, they need to be losing their rights and only have the liabilities and the responsibility of passing off just financially. And the people who want to provide children with a loving home and take care of them, the people who are wanting the rights to parent, they should be able to receive that more easily. And that's really where I think we're having some real struggles in this country, and you know, probably in other countries as well. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I would be curious to know what your guys' thoughts are. I mean, I hope this video doesn't end up just getting like a huge amount of hate, because I feel like some of my more libertarian views towards how maybe adoption could take place may not be popular even amongst my more conservative friends. But please be kind and courteous and respectful, and we can just share ideas and respect each other. I share about stuff to help share liberating truth, to help you find freedom from feminism. If you're into that, then subscribe to this channel and also like this video if you like it. So I will talk to you all later. Bye.